Welcome to Module 6. As always, let's go ahead and start with a short meditation. So go ahead and get comfortable and in a good position for breathing and relaxation. Otherwise, you can forward to the next slide.
Begin to find your comfortable seat. Let your eyes soften and perhaps come to a close. Let your face relax and the breath slow down, letting your inhales and exhales lengthen and become evenly spaced. Begin to draw awareness into your body. Draw awareness into your belly. Are you holding tension there? Or can you relax it just a little bit more, letting it naturally expand with each inhale and naturally contract with the exhale? I invite you to tap into your feeling of fullness in your belly. So what physical signal do you feel in your body that is telling you how empty or how full you are in this moment? Is the belly overly stretched? Does it feel stuffed too full? Or is it feeling just really empty and like you can feel those pains of hunger? You feel like you're just absolutely famished. And then just begin to notice between those two opposites where you're at. Are you somewhere in the middle? Are you satiated? Are you just a little bit hungry? And just begin to tune into your body, recognizing its signals. And anytime you're not sure, you can always tap back into this feeling. Close your eyes down and just notice. Letting go of judgment and tuning into the moment. Let's take one nice deep breath in, once again filling the belly, letting it expand with the inhale. And exhale out, letting it contract. And as you're ready, gently making small movements and coming back into the space around you.
All right, that was a good reminder of the previous module, feeling our fullness, but also feeling and noticing hunger. So if you are noticing that you're famished, go ahead and pause this module and get a snack or something to eat. And just a recap from our last module, interoceptive awareness is still something that you are most likely working on, being attuned to the needs of your body and noticing the signals it is giving you. That awareness is maybe something that you're still working on. Eating when hungry, not ignoring your hunger, eating without distraction, and doing away with food rules are all ways to increase your attunement to hunger and fullness. As always, some important reminders about intuitive eating. Intuitive eating is not a diet. Intuitive eating is not rigid. There are no rules with intuitive eating. Self-compassion and self-care are integral to intuitive eating. Intentions that I talked about last time are continue positive self-talk and coming at your thoughts, beliefs, rules, actions with curiosity instead of judgment. Simply remembering that awareness is the first step to healing is important. This goes back to principle 1 and is just a reminder as you continue your journey. Negative self-talk or thoughts about diets, diet rules, or food beliefs will arise from time to time throughout your life. Just the need to remember the importance of learning how to not let them hook you and not let those thoughts grow branches. Sit with your thoughts, acknowledge them, and then try to let them fade organically as you do some grounding exercises, question the thoughts, or maybe compare those thoughts to past experiences. Try mindful eating techniques that involve slowing down when eating and paying more attention to your food. Work on finding that last bite threshold, which we'll talk a little bit more about in this module. Asking yourself, does the food still taste good? How do I feel right now? Might this be my last bite? And if it is, that's okay, because if I want more later, I can have it. Milestone chart. How are you doing? Have you been able to test more fear foods or foods that you typically restrict? Have you been able to experience them with full permission? And are you noticing habituation? Just as a reminder, you will not need to work on all of your restricted or fear foods. After a while, you'll begin trusting your body more and realizing that with unconditional permission to eat, you are in control. The food rules are not. How are you doing discovering your hunger and your fullness? Have you been filling out those discovery scales? And are you noticing any trends? Are you eating, when you're too hungry? And is that making you eat past fullness? What is that looking like? Are you noticing anything? Just as a reminder, all of these become easier as you work towards ditching diets, improving your self-compassion, your positive self-talk, and your self-care practices, questioning your beliefs and rules, and being more mindful in your everyday life. These all make this whole journey just a little bit easier as you work through all of these. I want to ask, how is that pro and con list coming along? Back in module 3, you may have created a list of pros and cons of intuitive eating. Have you been able to add more pros? Maybe delete some of those cons. How's that list looking? Speaking of self-care, what have you done for yourself lately? So I want you to take a look again at pages 41 through 43 in your workbook. Have you been able to add more self-care practices to your routine? What have you done for you lately? This is just a gentle reminder of what self-care might look like. Getting adequate sleep, making time to be social and be with friends, taking time away to be with yourself and do something that you enjoy, such as reading a book, taking a walk in nature, taking a bath. And then there's that physical piece, doing some gentle movement that you enjoy that makes you feel good, whether it's walking, running, yoga, or swimming. Being active is definitely good self-care. Lastly, remember that saying no is okay. Think of yourself first. It might be new to you, and that's okay, but it's important, and it's an important part of self-care. If you need to say no to someone in order to stay on track in a certain area of your life, give yourself permission to do so. Let's move on to principle 6, discover the satisfaction factor. By honoring all the principles of intuitive eating, you will have greater satisfaction in your meals. Here are 3 examples of how satisfaction is the cornerstone or the hub of intuitive eating. Let's just look at principles 1, 2, and 3. Principle 1, ditching diets will help you be more present when eating your meals, rather than being caught up in your head about what you're eating and whether it's a good or a bad choice, or whether it fits into your diet rules for the day. Principle 2, honoring your hunger. When you're pleasantly hungry, food actually tastes better. You'll find more satisfaction in the foods that you eat. When you're overly hungry, your primal hunger takes over, and food is simply a vessel for making you feel better and replenishing you. You'll likely eat it too fast to even notice satisfaction. Principle 3, make peace with food. Unconditional permission to eat will help take away the guilt of eating. Who enjoys food when they're feeling guilty about eating it? Eating with guilt takes away satisfaction. Eating a food and not knowing when you will allow yourself to eat it again, it also takes away from joy and satisfaction. I, of course, could continue through all the principles, but I will not. Hopefully now it's clear that satisfaction is truly the cornerstone of intuitive eating. Nothing would be more tiresome than eating and drinking if God had not made them a pleasure as well as a necessity. Let's talk about some key concepts for today's module. What do you want? Slow and mindful eating. Sensory-specific satiety. The impact of hunger and fullness. And check your eating environment. Let's start with what do you want? When was the last time you asked yourself, What sounds good? It's so refreshing to stop thinking about what can fit into my diet today and instead start to think, what actually sounds good today? Have you ever craved something at a restaurant only to get there and order the salad or something else you thought would be a better choice? Maybe you order the chicken or the grilled chicken salad instead while you were looking longingly at your friend's burger. Perhaps you were craving a burger all day long. You wanted that flavor, that mouth feel, but you ordered the grilled chicken salad instead. Later, you might find that your biology has you still searching for that taste you were craving but never got. We've all done it. We want the burger or the pasta or the pizza, you name it. But we get to the restaurant and think we'd be better off just getting the salad or grilled chicken with a side of vegetables. We wanted one thing, but ordered something else. This rarely leads to true satisfaction. This does not mean a salad or a grilled chicken and vegetables can't be satisfying, because it can. But if your mind was on something else and you chose to ignore it to choose something better, chances are you will still search for those flavors and that mouthfeel when you get home from the restaurant. If you're unsatisfied, you'll be on the prowl regardless of your satiety or fullness level, and eventually you'll eat more. So again, what do you want? What has impacted your current ability to feel food satisfaction? Are there things from your childhood that are still impacting you? I want you to go ahead and pause this module and take a look at page 133. What do you really want to eat? This is a good activity just to get you thinking about what it is that may be holding you back from simply asking the questions, what do I want and what sounds good right now? There's no wrong answers here. The activity is really just for reflective purposes. I want to ask, what did you notice? Sensory considerations. Let's get back to the idea of what sounds good. Here are some things you might consider when asking what sounds good in the moment. Texture, aroma, temperature, appearance, and taste. Texture. Do I want something smooth, chunky, flaky, soft, crumbly? What sounds good right now? Aromas. Do I want a freshly baked smell? Do I want something garlicky, oniony? Do I want a smell of charred meat or something more cozy like vanilla and cinnamon? Or something more reminiscent of my childhood, like the smell and aroma of mac and cheese or freshly baked pizza? Temperature. Do I want something hot, cold, lukewarm? What sounds good right now? Appearance. Do I want something colorful or more simple? Taste. Do I want something savory, sweet, salty, umami, sour, bitter? What sounds good in the moment? Keep in mind, this might change day to day and also season to season. Eating while distracted means you may not feel your fullness. So let's talk about slow and mindful eating. Distraction can really take away from that feeling and that attunement of fullness. It can also take away from satisfaction. Eating too fast can take away from that feeling of fullness and also satisfaction. If your primal hunger has taken over and you've waited too long to eat, you guessed it. You may not be able to notice and feel your fullness, but you also might not be able to find satisfaction in the foods that you eat. All said, eating more mindfully and slowly will help you with fullness attunement and find more satisfaction in your meals. Think about the last time you were around a baby, how they explore their food from texture to mouthfeel to smell to taste, and just savor it as they feel their fullness and let that feeling of fullness and satisfaction help them decide whether to continue eating or stop. They have such little distraction, no computers, no devices, no office work, maybe just a dog begging for food and adults taking pictures of them. I-EAT stands for Intuitive Eating Awareness Training. It assists you in paying closer attention to the fine details of your foods through all of your senses: sight, smell, touch, mouthfeel, and taste. For your self-study assignment, which I'll remind you at the end, I would like for you to try to do the I-EAT activity if it's something that sounds good to you. Next is our voices segment. I actually interviewed my daughter, but chose not to share the clip because it did get a little off script. Paige, as with most kids her age, wholeheartedly thinks of satisfaction as a number one driver of her food choices. At her age, they aren't inundated with food rules or beliefs, which makes choosing food based on satisfaction easier. And honestly, it's second nature. Have you ever talked to a kid about why they make certain food choices? It might be eye-opening. Paige also indicated that she likes to choose foods that will keep her full for longer. I had to laugh out loud when she said that because I did not prompt her to say this. She truly thinks about this when choosing foods. So satisfaction and what will help keep her full. Sensory specific satiety. We talked about this a little bit in the last module. Maybe we didn't give it a name at that point. We talked about it more in relation to that last bite threshold. At a certain point in your meal, your taste buds begin to desensitize to the taste and flavor of foods. Ask yourself as you're eating, has the flavor diminished? Does it still smell good? Is the texture and the appearance still appealing? How about the temperature of the food? So at the end of the last module, I asked you to start paying attention to these questions, but now it has a name, sensory specific satiety. At a certain point, your food just doesn't taste as good. And generally speaking, that is also when you start to notice fullness a little bit more. So back to the last bite threshold. As a reminder, it's the end point of eating for now. It's when you might start to notice that feeling of fullness. You also might start to notice that sensory specific satiety kicking in, where food just doesn't taste good anymore. The difference now is that if you decide to put your fork or your spoon down and be finished with your meal, you now have unconditional permission to eat. So if you want to eat more later, you absolutely can. Let's talk about how hunger and fullness impact satisfaction. Do you ever eat less on days that you know you'll be going to a party or even a restaurant or other event at night? How long does it take to find satisfaction at that party or that meal? If you wait too long to eat and you skip meals during the day, you're not going to feel that satisfaction as much when you go to that party or at that restaurant with your meal or the snacks that you're eating at the party. So pay attention to that. As a kid, were you ever asked to eat because it was time to eat, but you weren't very hungry? How satisfied were you when you ate the food? Okay, let's think about with your own kids if you have them. Do your kids ever reluctantly sit at the dinner table picking through their food? It may be something they love, but they don't want to eat it if they aren't hungry. Going back to the idea that kids are really good with intuitive eating. If they're not hungry, they know it's just not going to taste as good and they don't want to eat. They're already a little bit full. They have no desire to eat. So food tastes the most satisfying when you're at that moderate hunger level, which is roughly a 3 or 4 on the hunger scale. You'll get more familiar with what that feels like for you as you continue that hunger discovery scale. Let's talk about your eating environment. Here are some things to keep in mind when it comes to your eating environment and mindfully eating. Your eating environment does actually affect how satisfying your meal is. It's important to make sure that you give yourself enough time to eat your meal. If you have time, set a nice table. It doesn't have to include candles, as in this picture, but even just putting out placemats, napkins, silverware, setting the table, even if it's very basic, will actually make the experience and the meal more satisfying. Sitting while eating, playing calming music if you can. Also, try to stay off your phone, computer, television, etc., for at least half the meal. Or I always say, if you can do that for at least one meal a day, that's a great start. Consider whether, at least at first, you need to eat alone more often. Obviously, if you eat with your family at the end of the night, I'm not telling you not to do that. But maybe now at this earlier part of your journey, when you're still trying to discover your hunger and fullness and feel what satisfaction really means to you or what that tastes like, maybe not eating with someone else or not eating with a group of people more often would be good. Eating with friends is incredibly enjoyable, but it just might make it more difficult to notice fullness and satisfaction. So while you're still learning, just maybe eat more meals alone without distraction. That is the end of this module. And before we end, I always want to give some further learning. Practicing mindfulness has a lot of just really short meditations that you can use to practice with throughout your day if you would like. The Body Positive, I highly recommend the Fundamentals course for individuals. I've got that listed in your resources handout. Some self-study assignments. I want you to write a letter to the last meal that you ate and pay more conscious attention to how you're feeding yourself. Answer these questions. How did that meal taste? How did it make you feel before and after? Would you choose that meal again? Would you choose that eating environment again? Would you have enjoyed it better had you been less hungry or more hungry when starting? Next, I want you to fill out pages 138 to 139, the I Eat script, or the I Eat practice worksheet on page 140. Page 144, satisfaction discovery worksheet. Just like you're discovering your hunger and fullness, I want you to start discovering what satisfaction means to you and what it tastes like. This is a quote directly from the Body Positive Fundamentals course that I took. Sense your body and your history with food. There's no right or wrong in the decisions that you make. Every time we eat is just a learning experience. We take how we feel afterwards forward as information before we eat again. So the two questions are, what do I want before you eat? And then getting as close to what you want as you can. And afterwards, how do I feel without judgment? Logging that sensation of how you feel in your brain and holding it as information for the next time you feed yourself. Some mantras for the next time. Before your meals, ask, what do I want? After your meals, ask, how do I feel? Am I truly satisfied? I hope you enjoyed this module and remember to reach out to me at any time for questions or comments.